This is Stephen Mitchell's Ancient Greek Architecture. Mitchell, while we're here in the complete middle of nowhere, tell us, what is Greek monumental architecture?
Well, Greek monumental architecture evolved significantly over time. Became more artistic by increasingly bound by rules and convention. With the evolution of tools and materials, the architectural monument became more advanced. So, ancient Greek monumental architecture that we will focus on is made up of the temples and public buildings from the ancient Mycenaean period to the reign of Pericles. These buildings can be distinguished from their highly formalized characteristics in structure and decoration. The temples were obvious due to their landscape, as they were usually located on high ground, so that their proportions and the effects of light on the surfaces could be viewed from all angles. The rectangular-shaped temple is the most common design in Greek public buildings. As stated by Colette Hemingway, the independent scholar and author of architecture in ancient Greece, the architectural order governed not only the common but also the relationships among all components of architecture.
Interesting. Okay, so from that, let's go to the first known